want to welcome our eminent panelists, His Excellency Andres Alaman Zavala, Minister for Foreign Affairs, Chile, Ambassador Julian Ventura, former Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mexico, Excellency Raul Cano Ricciardi, our Vice Minister for Economic Relations and Integration, Paraguay, Ambassador Riva Ganguly Das, Secretary East, Ministry of External Affairs. Their detailed CVs are on our website, so I will not spend time introducing them in greater length. They are well-known personalities all over the world. Our subject today is South Rising, the decade for a new America. And why not that should be the subject? 33 countries in the Americas, of which 3 are members of the G20. They have the combined GDP of India and the ASEAN. But we are going through a very difficult period. Even before the pandemic hit at the beginning of 2020, the region's GDP was already crawling at about 2% per year. And the pandemic, it seems, threatens to wipe out a decade or more of human and economic development progress. Inequality, lack of cohesion within societies are becoming triggers all over the world for social protest. The question before all of us is, how do we get out of this? How do we build inclusive and cohesive societies post a pandemic that has exposed deep social fractures within all our societies? So let me turn first of all to Minister Alaman. Sir, if you would give your assessment of how you see from Chile, Chile has been having a difficult time. How do you see the situation emerging from Chile?
Bueno, thank you very much for this invitation, for participating in this dialogue. As you say, good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everybody that's joining this conversation. Let me start by saying that for many decades, we have believed that the Global South is a region of the future. In Asia, South Pacific, Africa, and Latin America, the world have witnesses an important development, improving the living conditions of a large number of people while integrating more and more families into the middle class, providing them with access to education, health, and social security. Also, it's important to know that new global actors are playing an important role in the world arena. And of course, I want to highlight the example of India. When talking about India, we're not just talking about future, but about present. As former President Barack Obama said some years ago, India is not just a rising power. India has already risen. Nonetheless, the projections for the new decade, even before the COVID-19, were not promissory for Latin American countries. There are not secret receipts to achieve development. The key is growth. Then, when we look to our performance during the last 2 decades, we can see that Latin America and the Caribbean has only grown an average of 1.6 yearly. These rates behind Europe and Central Asia, far from the Middle East, even lower than Sub-Saharan Africa, East Asia. And what about India? India, following the figures of the Reserve Bank, is been growing at 11.15 percentage of the last during the last years. So before the COVID, the region had some problems in terms of achieving a fast and important growth. So once the pandemic is gone, whenever this is going to happen, what must be done? And I would just want to open the conversation, pointing 4 points that, from the perspective of Chile, are very important. First, I think the temptation of closing our economies may increase. And we think that is wrong. We think differently. We will be persistent in our commitment to free and open trade, especially looking for new partnerships in the South. This is, for instance, one of the main reasons behind our efforts to strengthen and deepen our preferential trade agreement with India, and in addition, to become a dialogue partner of ASEAN from our current position as development partner, while we maintain our will towards a full membership of the TPP-11. So, open commerce, be persistent in terms of trade, with stable and well-known rules, I think is task number one in terms of the recovery. Then, the pandemic has accelerated the uptake of digital solutions, tools and services speeding up the global transition towards a digital economy. And over this last year, we have witnessed how digitalization has allowed for telemedicine, teleworking, and online education services to now be delivered digitally. We really think this is a second very important trend we must achieve. Digital trade is now one of the most dynamic sectors in the global economy, and we should further harness it when dealing with the recovery process. The digital economy has enabled cooperation in emerging areas and stimulated interoperability between our countries. Emerging technologies such as blockchain, artificial intelligence, the so-called Internet of Things, are positively altering the trade landscape. Further, the digital economy will facilitate trade through paperless trading, express shipments, cybersecurity cooperation, and data flows. In third place, the economic, and this is of course very important, the economic recovery post-pandemic cannot be rising upon the shoulders of a more damaged planet. As for any other economic area, in order to be sustainable, recovery must be green. And we have a great opportunity to devise programs to enhance productivity through innovation and investigating for a greener and more sustainable future, aiming to zero net carbon emissions. New energy sources like green hydrogen, geothermal, solar, and aeolic energy and lithium are important alternatives for that goal, in which, of course, my country have put forward appropriate investment policies. Then, and to end this very short presentation, these very short remarks, we must speak about democracy. Being, of course, a good in itself is also related to other relevant benefits. It has a key role in the protection of human rights, but at the same time, it's a guarantee to stability and hence economic development and investments. Democratic societies also have the opportunity to keep the governments accountable. This is why democracy and democratic quality are so important for a recovery. To sum up, dear friends, open trade and cooperation between countries, a renewed commitment for multilateralism, a healthy architecture of global governance are essential. Such pledges are indispensable if collectively we wish to provide a better and peaceful life for our people. As the pandemic has dramatically taught us, we all inhabit the same world, and the future, like it or not, belongs to all of us. I would allow myself to share a simple yet deep lesson from my old days as a rugby player. Together, we are stronger.
Thank you, Mr. Alaman, for that excellent opening, which sets the tone for where we are actually looking forward to in a world where some countries are busy raising borders. You've made a very strong case for an open architecture, a rules-based architecture, and one that can be fueled by technologies. You've laid all these points very, very succinctly on the table. Thank you, and thank you for the time in which you did it. With this, let me turn to Ambassador Ventura. Your comments, sir, on how do you see living in Mexico and looking at the Americas, looking at Asia? how do you configure the situation in the world around you?
Well, thank you very much, Sanjoy. It's great to be back at Raisina. Congratulations for dedicating a specific discussion to Latin America and issues. I think, as I mentioned at Raisina last year, Latin America is a geopolitically relevant region, and it's increasingly important as a part of India's global outreach. So that I think this is the first time in the 6 editions of Raisina that we've had a specifically Latin American component. So I hope that this becomes a permanent feature as we go on in the future. You mentioned something very important in your introductory comments, and that is the diversity of the region, the size of the region, both in terms of its economic dimension and the very heterogeneous character of the countries that make up Latin America as a whole. You have very strong Pacific-oriented economies like Chile, Peru, and Mexico, which have made very important strategic decisions reaching out across the Pacific. You have Mexico as an integral part of the North American market, high degree of integration. You have 3 G20 members, 3 OECD members. So it's very important to keep that in mind for our viewers to understand that there is not necessarily a one-size-fits-all global strategy, especially as we face this very big challenge related to the pandemic. However, there are common challenges. You mentioned the tremendous impact that the pandemic has had on key indicators in Latin America. We have suffered very important setbacks in employment, in present and future growth, how long it's going to take us to go back to a growth trajectory, structural issues related to inequality. And I think that regardless of the level of development of any society, the big challenge that we all have around the world is delivering results for our citizens. And inequality and lack of inclusion are the 2 main challenges where every other global component comes in, and we really have to work to come together. So the work is cut out for us as we reach out and as we try to get out of the situation. Minister Alamand has given us a kind of a recipe, a roadmap of what we should be doing to strengthen our position. I would focus on 2 challenges and close with the Asian dimension that you mentioned. A lot of the challenge has to do with internal decisions. What kind of structural decisions all our governments are going to take regarding productivity, regarding public investment, regarding strengthening our public services, education, investing in human capital. We're going to talk a little bit later about innovation, where we have a lot of work to do. But definitely an outward and open look is very important. Mexico is a very Asia-Pacific oriented country. The focus tends to be in China just because of the dimension of the country. But our links with India have strengthened dramatically. Our trade ties have more than tripled over the last decade. Strong relationships in Northeast Asia with Japan and Korea. We are perhaps Latin America's most manufacturing-oriented economy. 80% of manufacturing exports of Latin America are Mexican exports. Plus, there's the added dimension of the North American community. So Mexico, Canada, in that dimension are going to be the first 2 economies that pick up from the massive stimulus package that is working its way down the pipeline in the U.S. In other regions, in other parts of our continent, the driver might be more in the initial phase, the commodity, the demand around the world, not only in China, but in other big commodity importers. And I would close with this. Those are very much 2 needed drivers to get back on the pathway of economic growth and recovery. But to get back to a growth paradigm that is sustainable in the future, we're going to need to go beyond that, make an opportunity out of this crisis, invest in education, invest in innovation, and reach out to like-minded partners to strengthen the multilateral system in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Ventura. Expansions in productivity, the need for innovation, the role of technology, these are all subjects I'll come back to after this round. But let me turn to Ambassador Cano. The COVID-19 pandemic hit Paraguay just as the country was embarking on actually a strong recovery path after the slump of 2019. That had nothing to do with Paraguay, but rather things which were happening around it in the bigger world. And COVID has impacted Paraguay's efforts at poverty reduction and inequality. Paraguay is in a different situation from many other countries like Mexico. So how deeply has the country been hit, and what does the road ahead look like?
Thank you very much. First of all, we want to thank ORF and the Ricina Dialogue 2021 to be Paraguay invited. It's our first time being joining this dialogue, and we are really delighted to express our opportunities, our view, what we see the development in Latin America. Say first of all, good morning to Chancellor, Minister of Foreign Affairs Andrés Alamán. Good morning to Julián Ventura, former Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mexico. And of course, good morning to the moderator, Sanjoy Joshi, and Madame Riva from the Ministry of External Affairs of India. There is no magic glue to receive to bind the whole continent together. However, we can be embarked in a several integration process in which we agree, free up trade, and integrate our economy. The most important example in the south of Latin America is the LAIA, Latin American Integration Association, which is an umbrella for our integration process named Mercosur, the Pacific Alliance, and the Andean Community, among others. Minister of Foreign Affairs Alamán mentioned that trade is the right path in order to get growth, and then we have to, as well, Julián Ventura has mentioned that there's some internal factor, not only the external factor that we have to do internally in our country. But we agree with them in terms that the trade is one of the good tools in order to get paving the road for development in our country. In the case of Paraguay, to become a hub for global value chain is still a very far way. We are still concentrating in trying to develop our regional value chain, taking advantage that we are surrounded by big market and we have a comparative advantage. Although, for example, we have the automobile industry back in South America with a big production plant in Brazil and Argentina, and their auto part factory located in Paraguay and Uruguay. We are in the regional value chain. For instance, in terms of the auto part, we import part of it from Chile, the copper, and we're trying to get in the regional value chain, into the regional value chain be the platform to the global value chain. Under the current situation in Latin America is being severely hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. The health crisis contracted growth and has had an enormous social and economic impact. Lower levels of learning and employment are likely to reduce future earnings, while high level of public and private debt may strain the financial sector and a slow recovery. Despite of the economic outlook for Latin America, we expect it to improve this year unless the epidemiologic outbreak occurs. The region is expected to grow by 4.4% in 2021. There are signs of pointing to rapid recovery. International commodity trading remained relatively strong. Most commodity prices are higher than before the COVID-19 crisis, as well as trade of food and other agro-industrial products is in high demand. Latin America is expected as a whole to change the paradigm of being raw material supplier. We need to understand of the developed and developing country to make that change. We need the understanding. And we foresee the regional value chain to be the platform for integration, the global value chain. We want to change the paradigm. I'm talking about particular Paraguay. Paraguay is seen as an export of raw material. In order to have the foundation for a social economic growth, we need to change that paradigm. And Paraguay, as a landlocked and developing country, we need a special differential treatment that will require from the multilateral system. And so that's what I can share with you so far. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Cano, for that intervention on integrating regional value chains and global value chains. That's a very important subject which we will be taking up throughout this Right Now dialogue. So stay tuned to this. Let me turn to Ambassador Das. Minister Alamand, and after that, Ambassador Ventura, and of course, Ambassador Cano, both spoke about the issues which they were really raising were issues of partnerships for cooperation in areas of technology, raising productivity, building value chains. Now, my question to you is there wind in India's developmental partnership with this area, with the Caribbean, with Central America? What are the possibilities for cooperation? And the big question of innovation. Can these partnerships, now how do we get these partnerships to be innovation-based? Because that is the future.
Thank you. Excellencies, buenos dias a todos. I'm absolutely delighted to join colleagues and dignitaries from the Latin American region. It's a great honor to be with all of you. The fact that we are meeting in this format is a grim reminder of the times we live in. But I must congratulate URF for devoting a full session to Latin America, one of the most dynamic regions of the world, and a region with which our relationship has seen a constant upgradation. And like Mr. Ventura, I would like to recommend that you keep it in every session of Raisina, because I think this is a region which, with which we have an excellent relationship with a lot of potential. You mentioned, Dr. Joshi, about the 33 countries spread over South Central and America and the Caribbean, which is an important focus area for India. We have two strategic partnerships here, one with Brazil, and with Argentina. We have a privileged partnership with Mexico. The 1 million strong Indian diaspora brings us very close to the Caribbean region, which reinforces our historical and cultural linkages. India has, with its, has always stood by the region and has proved to be a credible, reliable, and committed long-time partner of the Latin American and Caribbean region. Political contacts and political interaction is a very important part of bilateral relationships. And Prime Minister has visited Brazil twice. He's visited Argentina and Mexico. President of India has visited 4 countries, and Vice President has visited 5 countries. We were very honored to have the President of Brazil as the chief guest for Republic Day last year, and President of Argentina, Guyana, and Argentina has visited India, and Vice Presidents of Guyana and Suriname. So there have been quite a lot of visits. India is also engages very actively with some of the regional groupings, the Mercosur, the CARICOM, SICA, which is the grouping of the Central American countries, and the Pacific Alliance. The first ever meeting between our Prime Minister and the 14-member Caribbean community actually took place in 2019 on the margins of UNGA. We have not been able to do much since then. And since you mentioned about the development assistance, etc., at this meeting, a $14 million grant was announced for the CARICOM community, and a $150 million line of credit specifically for solar, renewable energy and climate change was also announced. The COVID has, in a sense, been brought about a level playing field in a sense, because we don't have that mental perception of Latin America being far. Everybody is virtual now. So at that level, there have been a lot of virtual interaction, and External Affairs Minister has spoken to as many as 27 of his colleagues during this period. So we've had 3 joint commissions with Minister with Chile. We had a joint commission which I've also participated in. We've had joint commission with Mexico, and our MOs did a joint commission with Suriname. I will not dwell upon the business part, but I agree that we have seen a huge increase, a 5-fold increase in business in trade with Latin American countries. But since you mentioned specifically about innovation, etc., so I would like to mention that we've seen a very robust interaction with the region as far as space communications is concerned. ISRO has successfully launched the satellites of both Colombia and Chile. 8 countries of the region, Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, Chile, Panama, Bolivia, Colombia, and Peru, have participated in ISRO's capacity building program, which is called UN Unnati is the small form, where on nano satellite development. So this has been, we've covered a very large part of the region on this. Many countries in the region are keen to participate in the space sector, especially on launching and developing of satellites. Those of you who follow the region would have seen the launch of Brazilian satellites recently, and we have a very robust interaction with Argentina on Antarctica. So there are many areas of new technologies where we are interacting with the Latin American countries, which includes material sciences, nanotechnology, agricultural waste management, atmospheric sciences, and advanced applied physics. I will just briefly mention about development cooperation, where we have been expanding our assistance to various development partnership initiatives. We have a very unique program where we are leveraging our partnership with the United Nations and its expertise. And this is called the India-UN Development Partnership Fund. It was initiated in 2017. And it has ongoing projects of $6.5 million in the LAC region. These are small projects which we do and which are very, very community-centric projects. And these projects have helped India, helped us bring India closer to communities in Latin America. There are about, we have lines of credit operational of about $215 million. Our capacity building projects are very, very popular in Latin America. We have set up 6 IT centers in the LAC region in Costa Rica, Bolivia, Guatemala, Belize, Guyana, and Honduras. 2 are coming up in Argentina and Uruguay. So overall, I think we are a credible partner in terms of new areas of science, technology, space, etc. And the COVID has been a big challenge, but I don't think it has prevented us from moving forward. I'll restrict myself to these comments at this moment.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. We finished our first round. Now let me, for the second round, I'm going to be a little provocative. Let me underline provocative headline written by Ariel Castro Martinez, writing out of Australia in one of his articles. He poses a question, where in the Indo-Pacific is Latin America? It's not even a stone's throw away, it's far, far away. He argues that given a stall, we mentioned the CPTPP, we mentioned the TPP. He says given a stall CPTPP or TPP going nowhere, the signing of the RCEP has geoeconomically narrowed the Indo-Pacific idea into the reality of the Asia-Pacific and sidelined both India and the Americas. Do you agree with that view? And where does that leave the idea of the Pacific Alliance, which Chile, Colombia, Mexico, Peru, and the alliance associates across the Pacific really want to get into? Minister Alaman, what are your views?
let me jump into the floor with this provocative question. No.
Okay.
Let me say something very, very candidly and very clear. Indo-Pacific is a reality, and you must follow what are the policy strategies of the European Union, of Germany, of the US, even of the Squad, and clearly it's a political, a geographical space, and there's a lot of things that we can do towards this new reality. If you follow the figures between the trade, for instance, between our countries in Latin America, I'm speaking of my country, but it's almost the same situation with the others. In terms of trade towards China and in terms of trade towards India, and there's a huge room for improvement. India is going to become, as you all know, will have the same or even more population than China in the next decade, and there is a growing middle class in India. So there is a lot of room for improvement, not only in commodities, as Julian Ventura said before, but also in terms of food, all sort of the products that are basically that have an origin in Latin America. Agricultural products have a lot of space to win in this new region, and basically, of course, in India. So I really believe there is a great opportunity that must be seized for our countries. The challenge is for Latin America. India is a huge market, and we are lagging behind in terms of the things that we can do together. And also, let me tell you something also very important. Innovation, technology. There's a lot of things that can be done between India and countries in Latin America. Starting, for instance, with health. That's going to be so important to get rid of this pandemic. Well, India is very well positioned, is very well placed to be some sort of the pharmacy of the world in terms of medical supplies, in terms of medicaments, in terms of all what is needed, not only to face the pandemic, but to be able to have strong health in the world. And then you start opening and thinking in different things, in different alternatives. Energy. For instance, we in Chile, we are pushing forward a very strong strategy towards green hydrogen. As you well know, green hydrogen is going to be the fuel of the future. To be able to have a clean green hydrogen, you need to have renewable energies. And in the region, and specifically in Chile, we have very cheap renewable energies because we have the benefit of solar radiation, and also we have the benefits of very strong winds. So having these renewable energies at place, then you are able to push forward an initiative in terms of green hydrogen. And of course, there is a lot of space for cooperation in that development with India. But also, what I really think is taking in consideration the global role of India. Also, we can think in other sort of links, a better understanding in terms of the multilateral order, or even, for instance, push forward initiatives against the climate change. We in Chile have a close relation, and we want to strengthen the relation with India in terms of what we can do in terms of scientific investigation in Antarctica, as was mentioned. So there is a huge possibilities to enhance the relations, I would say the full relation between India and the region. Simply, we must start working, we must close the ties and be able to push forward these ideas.
Thank you so much, Mr. Alamán. Let me turn to Ambassador Ventura. Ambassador, the same theme I'm talking about. We're talking of the Indo-Pacific, the larger alliances. We're talking about the Pacific Alliance. In your view, how successful has Mexico been in developing consensus with other Latin American nations such as Brazil, Argentina, Chile on the larger global issues? And what is it that unites and what is it that divides countries in the region? If you can be short.
Yes, in this diversity that we underlined at the beginning, on some issues, there are things that you have more flexible partnerships and alliances to focus on specific challenge. I think that you can speak of Latin America as a whole being bound by a very strong commitment to multilateralism and to strengthening a rules-based international order. And that is something that has served us well over the last few short years, in which unilateralist tendencies and uncertainty were the rules of the game on key issues. So that is something that very rule of law, international law, multilateralist approach that colors what Latin America does in its footprint around the world is a very important factor of cohesion. But at the same time, there are smaller pieces of the puzzle that are practical, that are flexible. The Pacific Alliance is a key element. You have 4 economies that are Latin America's most open economies, who have not only looked out toward the Pacific to build partnerships with various countries in a free trade agenda, but also have recognized that we need to bind each other together by strengthening intra-regional trade, by facilitating movement between our 4 countries. So in a way, the alliance has been a kind of a trendsetter that has pulled along other countries in this idea of making the outward dimension of our role a lever for growth and development. In North America, in Mexico, there's a particular situation of having the modernized NAFTA agreement already approved. That gives us, in certain kinds of investment, a leg up in the global chessboard. So I would say that there is more that binds us than drives us apart, but you have practical alliances and practical partnerships, specifically as we reach out into the Asia-Pacific, into the Indo-Pacific, as Minister Alamand has mentioned.
Thank you. Ambassador Connell. So the pandemic, I would say, has put globalization at the crossroads. And you spoke about, regional value chains. You spoke about the integration of global value chains. The way I look at it, as nations struggle to tame the beast of this pandemic, many nations at the receiving end who are waiting for supplies of vaccines, which are waiting for supplies of PPE kits, medicines. What determines relationships between nations and regions are going to, these kinds of issues are going to make or mar global alliances? Is that true? And where do you see this going on from here?
Definitely, the COVID-19 that we are facing put it as all of the country in a big challenge. We trust to the multilateral system, to the COVAX instrument in order to get access to the vaccine. Unfortunately, we just put it left behind. We just received less than 3,000 vaccines so far. We trusted to the multilateral system and we failed to do that. I want to give you a strong thankful, particularly to the government of Chile. They provide us a strong support, providing us 20,000 vaccine for our country. We just finished the vaccine system to the medical system, and we just started today for people for over 85 and plus the regular system. This pandemic gave us a strong opportunity, and we, as well as we wanted to thank to Chile, we want to thank to the government of India through the Serum Institute. We did receive 100,000 vaccine a couple of weeks back. We're expecting to have another 100,000 doses in a couple of weeks, and we're just about to sign a contract with the Serum Institute, hopefully to provide 2 million of vaccine. What I'm trying to stress is that South-South cooperation is a way to move forward in terms of facing this pandemic caused by the COVID-19. And as Andres Alaman, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, mentioned, and as well Mr. Ventura, free trade or trade is a way forward in order to develop our capability. Paraguay, as a member of the Mercosur, we have a PTA agreement with India, but this is we wanted to improve it. We wanted to move forward. We wanted to go on a free trade agreement. We expressed our need. We did receive your request as well, and we want to pave the road in order to get to start a negotiation because we think that the emerging leaders, emerging country leaders in the world is very important to us in order to improve our trade. Trade is a way that we see in order to get to put the solid background in order to get a social and economic development.
Thank you, Ambassador. Let me turn to you now. Yes, we are all battling a pandemic. And as Ambassador Cano, Minister Alaman have pointed out, India has shown the ability, with the strength of its pharmaceutical industry, to reach out with a helping hand far beyond its borders. And the Indian pharmaceutical and healthcare sector has reasonably strong links in the region, but there's a lot of room where more can be done. Now, does the pandemic open opportunities to elevate this relationship and turn it into something that can be a win-win for both sides? And what are governments doing on both sides to assist the private sector in this endeavor?
Certainly, I think, India's credibility as a partner in providing vaccines and pharmaceutical products has been proven through the COVID pandemic process. Indian pharma companies are already well established in the region, and many of them have production facilities in Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, and in Central America. Some of the very important Indian companies like Torrent Pharma, Zydus Cadila, Dr. Reddy's, Glenmark, and some small and medium and large pharma companies also have subsidiaries in Latin America. We have been very interested in entering the pharma market in Latin America through the government procurement process. And, these are conversations which have been going on for a very long time. There are certain issues we face in terms of, registration of our pharma products and our placement of our products in various categories. But we're very confident that, after the way in which India has proved its credentials as a pharmaceutical, the vaccine producer, and also in the initial days of the COVID in terms of providing the essential medicines for dealing with COVID, I think we will may have good success in this area. India has, as you know, we provided HCQ to 27 out of the 33 countries, and many of these countries have given fast-track approval to our vaccines. And we've seen the dignitaries present here today have mentioned about the vaccines which have reached their countries. Latin America is projected to have a GDP of about 3.7% in 2021 after the estimated contraction of 7.7 in 2020. Given this recovery of growth, and I think Indian pharma products could double to, this is our estimate, could double to $20 billion in the next couple of years. pharma players can invest big. After all, the private sector has to take the decisions based on their own due diligence that they do. And governments work in partnership with each other to provide the enabling environment in which businesses can flourish. And we have no doubt that, Latin America, the whole region itself will see a lot of benefit in that. It is, we know, is one of the regions which is, which has a large aging population. It is aging fast, and there is a demand for medication and pharmaceutical products, which India is well positioned to provide. This would be my sort of brief comment on this.
We are almost out of time. In fact, we are out of time, but I think I'll use my privilege and extend a little more time to just ask everybody to have brief closing comments in a short 1 minute. If you wish to say anything, want to make any statement about the larger situation which we've been discussing, here's the time to do it. Just 1 minute, brief. Who's going to go first? Mr. Alamand?
Here I go in less than a minute, and thank you very much for your wise and provocative moderation. 5 sentences. Number 1, we have to be persistent in our pledge to free and open trade. Number 2, we must speed up global transition towards digital economy. Number 3, we must keep recovery green. Number 4, we need to protect democracy as a guarantee for stability and economic development. And 5th, we must use our imagination and political will to bridge better India with Latin America in all different fields.
Thank you. Ambassador Ventura.
Well, thank you very much. Describing what Minister Alamand has just said, I think that once we get beyond the initial detonators that will get us back into the path of economic recovery, we have to position ourselves to a kind of what I would call a 2.0 growth paradigm that is driven, one, by the challenge of concrete actions to add value to what we grow, to what we produce, to what we export around the region, and 2, which has an innovation component, which is what will make our growth sustainable and more robust in the future. India can play a very important role in this process, in the field of productive investment that adds value. That's the target that we should be working on as we move toward the future. Because of India's weight and because of India's leadership in some of these areas, I think there's no more ideal partnership. We need to take strategic decisions. It's not automatic and it's not short term, but it certainly gives us an objective to work and to look forward to if we both have the political will to work within that framework.
Ambassador Kano.
Thank you very much. First of all, I totally agree with what was mentioned by Minister Alamand, as well as Mr. Ventura. Paraguay want to change the paradigm. We don't want to be eternally being a raw material provider. We want to add value of what we have as a raw material producing from ourselves and going to the regional global chain and the regional global chain as a platform to join in the global value chain. And we want to stress that we wanted to request and especially differential treatment in case of Paraguay because we are a landlocked country. Landlocked country, and we wanted to stress that integration is a way to move forward in order to put a solid ground for a social and development with a social view in terms of giving our citizens the opportunity to have a better life.
Ambassador Das, last word to you.
Thank you. We are looking at, we are already making efforts to diversify our engagement from traditional areas of focus such as trade, investment, food, energy security to new areas. I have already mentioned space, so I'm not going to talk about space anymore. To, for example, defense. Chilean Navy has recently bought an anchor handling towing supply and standby vessel built by Larsen & Toubro at the cost of $11.5 million. This is the kind of cooperation we are looking for. We already have a lot of training and capacity building in defense. Latin America is home to strategic minerals like lithium. The lithium triangle consists of Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile again, and we are looking at greater cooperation in that area. Latin America also is very rich in agriculture. The region can potentially contribute to India's long-term goals in food security. Because there is an advantage arising from the reversal of seasons between South America and India. As a result, Indian consumers can enjoy seasonal vegetables throughout the year if we are able to work on this a little in a stronger way. The area is home to 20% of world's proven oil and gas reserves. We are diversifying our dependence on a few players in the oil sector. And, you'll be happy to know that Guyana is a non-traditional player, and we've started importing oil from Guyana as well. The renewable energy is another area which has opened up especially with cooperation under the framework of International Solar Alliance. So these are the main areas of cooperation we are looking at, and we are confident that we will move forward on all these areas.
Thank you, all of you, for that wonderful discussion we've had. The way out of this viral world is with the Americas. It is together. That is the only way we are going to get out of it. You've laid some excellent propositions on the table, very, very succinct. Thank you. Thank all of you for doing this. It's been a great contribution to the Raisina Dialogue and to RF. Hope to see you really, not virtually, in better times.
Thank you, Sanjoy. Thank you for the invitation. Ambassador Das, Minister.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.